Today, we're back with another striking story. We all know how important trust and respect are in a marriage, but sometimes those boundaries can be crossed. Our guest faced a situation where her husband pressured her into something she didn't want, leaving deep scars in both her relationship and her life. Today, we'll hear her story firsthand, learn about what happened, and discuss how boundaries should be established in a relationship. Without further ado, let me introduce you to Laurel. You won't believe what my husband made me do. 3 men, 1 night. It was supposed to be a joke, but it nearly destroyed everything. It was a Friday night, one of those nights where you just want to unwind, let go of the week's stress, and just be with the person you love. My husband and I were lounging around at home, sipping wine, talking about random things. It felt like one of those cozy nights where nothing major was supposed to happen. But then he brought up something that threw me completely off guard. He casually asked if I'd ever thought about being with other men. At first, I thought he was joking, so I laughed it off. But then he continued. He wasn't just asking about any men. He was talking specifically about black men, 3 of them. My heart started racing, and not in a good way. My mind couldn't process what he was suggesting. I mean, who just comes out and says something like that? I stared at him, waiting for some sign that he was pulling my leg, but his expression stayed the same, dead serious. I felt uncomfortable, to say the least. I thought maybe it was some weird fantasy he was sharing and we'd move on. But no, he kept bringing it up. At first it was little comments here and there, teasing remarks about what it might be like. Then, he started making more direct suggestions. He talked about how it could spice up our relationship, how it would be a one-time thing that could make things more exciting between us. I wasn't even sure how to respond. How was I supposed to react to something like that? Was I supposed to say yes? Was this some kind of test? As the days went by, the topic kept creeping back into our conversations. At first, I shut it down quickly, changing the subject or making excuses, but my husband wouldn't let it go. He even started talking about specific men, friends of his. He said they were all cool guys, that nothing had to happen unless I wanted it to, and that it would just be for fun. My stomach would twist every time he brought it up, but I didn't know how to tell him how deeply it bothered me. Part of me didn't want to start a fight, but another part of me felt this growing sense of resentment. One night, he went even further. He suggested we meet these 3 men. He framed it like it was no big deal, just a casual hangout with some of his friends. I hesitated, unsure. If this was another one of his attempts to push me into something I wasn't comfortable with. But for the sake of keeping the peace and not blowing up our marriage over what I hoped was just a bad idea, I reluctantly agreed to go. That evening, we met his friends at a local bar. The whole time, I felt nervous, like I was walking into some kind of trap. His friends seemed nice enough, polite, charming, and maybe a little too friendly, but there was an awkwardness in the air. I could sense something just beneath the surface, this unspoken understanding between them and my husband. It made me sick to my stomach. As the night went on, the drinks kept flowing, and the conversations got more flirty. I tried to laugh it off, but deep down I was extremely uncomfortable. One of the men kept giving me these lingering looks, and every time I felt his eyes on me, I felt this knot tighten in my chest. My husband, on the other hand, seemed totally relaxed, like he was enjoying watching me get all this attention. He kept smiling at me like this was some kind of game. Eventually, we all ended up back at our house. I didn't want to, but my husband insisted it would be more chill to hang out at home. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into something I wasn't ready for. Once we were back at the house, the vibe changed. The guys were sitting on the couch joking around, but there was a tension in the air. I was in the kitchen trying to keep busy when one of them came in to help me clean up. He got way too close, standing just inches away from me, and I could feel his breath on my neck as he leaned in to grab a dish towel. My heart raced again, and not in a good way. Then he whispered something in my ear. I couldn't hear everything he said, but I caught enough to know that this wasn't just about hanging out anymore. He was making a move, and I could feel the situation slipping out of my control. My husband was in the other room, probably aware of what was happening, and he didn't seem to care. I felt trapped. I tried to brush it off, but the tension kept growing. The guy kept brushing up against me, making small, subtle touches, testing the waters to see how far he could go. I felt frozen. Should I tell him to stop? Should I call my husband in? But how would that look? My mind raced with a million thoughts, and my body was reacting in ways I didn't understand. I wasn't sure if it was fear, excitement, or both. It was like I was on the edge of something dangerous. That's when I realized just how deep I'd gotten myself into this situation. I needed to get out of the kitchen, out of the house, out of this entire mess, but I didn't know how. Every time I tried to move, it felt like something was pulling me back, like this invisible weight was keeping me stuck in place. The air in the kitchen felt thick, almost suffocating. I needed to get out of there, but my feet felt glued to the floor. The man standing next to me wasn't backing off, and the way he was looking at me made my skin crawl. He leaned in even closer, his breath now against my ear, and whispered something else. This time I heard him clearly. "You look like you want this." That was it. That one sentence snapped me out of my frozen state. I backed away quickly, bumping into the counter behind me. I was trying to put as much space between us as possible without causing a scene. My heart was pounding, and I could feel my face getting hot, a mix of anger and embarrassment. I needed to stop this now, but my mind was racing, and I didn't know what to do. I looked over at the doorway, hoping my husband would walk in. Maybe sense that things had gone too far, but he didn't. I realized in that moment that he wasn't going to. He was the one who had put me in this situation in the first place. I was on my own. I pushed past the guy and made my way to the living room where the other two men were laughing with my husband. They didn't seem to notice the tension or the panic that I was feeling. My husband glanced at me and smiled, completely unaware of the turmoil going on inside me. Or maybe he did know, and he just didn't care. I couldn't tell anymore. I sat down on the edge of the couch, my hands gripping the cushions so hard that my knuckles turned white. I kept thinking about what had just happened in the kitchen, how close things had come to crossing a line that I wasn't ready to cross. I wanted to say something to tell my husband that this wasn't fun, that this wasn't exciting for me, but I couldn't find the words. The night dragged on, each moment feeling heavier than the last. The men kept drinking, laughing, and my husband continued to play along like everything was normal. But nothing about this was normal. I kept replaying the moment in the kitchen, how close I had come to losing control of the situation. It scared me. And more than that, it made me angry. How could my husband push me into something like this? How could he be so casual about it, as if my feelings didn't matter? Finally, the guys got up to leave. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, like a weight had been lifted off my chest. I watched as they walked out the door, and for the first time that night, I felt like I could breathe again. But the tension wasn't gone. It was still there, simmering just beneath the surface. After they left, I turned to my husband. He was still smiling like he had just hosted the perfect night, but I couldn't take it anymore. I had to say something. "What was that?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What do you mean?" he replied, looking genuinely confused, like he had no idea what I was talking about. "That," I said, motioning toward the door where his friends had just left. "That whole thing? What were you thinking?" He shrugged, his casual demeanor only making me more furious. "It was just a bit of fun. You didn't have to do anything you didn't want to." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Did you really not understand?" I said, my voice rising. "You call that fun? You put me in a situation where one of your friends was all over me, and you just sat there like it was no big deal." My husband's face changed, the smile dropped, and for the first time that night, I saw a flicker of realization in his eyes. But he didn't apologize. Instead, he got defensive. "I thought you were into it. You didn't say anything. You didn't stop him. That was the last straw. I couldn't hold back anymore. I didn't know how. I didn't know what to do. You're my husband. You're supposed to protect me, not throw me into situations like that." We argued for what felt like hours, Every time I tried to explain how uncomfortable I had been, how close things had come to going too far, he brushed it off. He kept insisting that it was just a fantasy, that I could have stopped it at any time. But he didn't get it. He didn't understand how trapped I had felt, how powerless I had been in that moment. By the time the argument finally ended, I was shaking. My husband stormed off to the bedroom, leaving me alone in the living room. I sat there staring at the empty wine glasses and the remnants of a night that had almost destroyed everything. I didn't know what to do next. I felt betrayed, confused, and deeply hurt. This wasn't how a marriage was supposed to be. I sat there in the quiet of the living room, my mind spinning. I couldn't shake the image of what had happened in the kitchen, how close everything had come to spiraling out of control. The way my husband just sat there casually laughing with his friends made my stomach turn. How could he not see the danger of what he was doing? How could he push me into something so reckless? I couldn't stand the tension in the room any longer. I got up and made my way into the kitchen, hoping that the simple act of cleaning up would help calm my nerves. I picked up the wine glasses, trying to focus on the mundane task, but my hands were shaking and my heart was still racing. I replayed the night in my head, piece by piece, the way he had asked me to go along with it, the way his friends had looked at me like I was something they could take if they wanted to, and then the moment in the kitchen, the way that man had leaned in, whispering things that made my skin crawl. I felt trapped, cornered. It was like I had been frozen, unable to move or speak. I hated myself for not standing up to him sooner, for letting it go as far as it did. I finished washing the dishes and stared out the window into the darkness outside. The house was quiet now, but it didn't feel peaceful. It felt empty, cold. I knew I couldn't just let this go. Something had shifted between my husband and me, something that couldn't be ignored or swept under the rug. He had crossed a line and there was no going back. I took a deep breath and headed to the bedroom. My husband was already in bed, scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened. He didn't even look up when I walked in. I stood there for a moment watching him, wondering how he could be so unaffected by everything that had just happened. How could he be so blind to the hurt and confusion he had caused? Finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "We need to talk," I said, my voice quiet but firm. He glanced up at me, raising an eyebrow. "About what?" he asked, as if he didn't already know. "About tonight," I said, sitting down on the edge of the bed. "About what you did?" He sighed, setting his phone down. "I already told you it was just a bit of fun. You didn't have to do anything. You didn't want to." I shook my head, feeling the anger rise up inside me again. "You don't get it," I said. "You put me in a situation where I felt trapped. You didn't care about how I was feeling. You were too busy trying to live out some fantasy, and you didn't stop to think about what it was doing to me." He frowned, sitting up a little. "I thought you were okay with it. You didn't say no. I didn't know how." I snapped, the words spilling out before I could stop them. I didn't know how to say no without ruining everything, without making things even more awkward. I trusted you to protect me, to look out for me, and instead, you put me in a position where I almost did something I'd regret for the rest of my life. He looked away, his expression unreadable. For a moment, I thought he might apologize, that he might finally understand what he had done. But when he spoke, his words were cold. "You're overreacting. Nothing happened. You're making a big deal out of nothing." That was it. I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't keep pretending that this was okay, that our marriage was okay. I had been pushed too far, and there was no coming back from it. I stood up, grabbing my phone and heading for the door. "Where are you going?" he asked, his voice sharp now. I paused in the doorway, my back to him. "I need some space," I said, my voice trembling. "I need to figure out what I want, because right now I don't think I can do this anymore." He didn't say anything, and I didn't look back. I walked out of the bedroom, down the hallway and out the front door, stepping into the cool night air. As I stood there taking deep breaths to calm myself, I realized something. I had been so focused on what he wanted, on trying to please him, that I had completely lost sight of what I needed, of what I deserved. I wasn't going to let that happen again. As I walked down the street away from the house, I felt a strange sense of relief. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I was done being pushed around. I was done being trapped in someone else's game. From now on, I was going to take control of my own life, my own choices, and no one was going to force me into anything I didn't want ever again. Today, we've once again seen how important boundaries and mutual respect are in a marriage. No one should ever be forced into a situation they don't want, especially by their closest partner. Marriage should be built on love and trust. If this story has raised awareness for you, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. With your support, we'll continue to be here with more stories and discussions. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you in the next.